Great night.
Yeah.
We went all over the place.
I hope so, because you know, that's turned out. Quarter. You gotta leave when you gotta leave. I appreciate you coming down. I wasn't gonna even give you my opinion because I already know. Downstairs, it was just this morning. Oh, yeah, I heard it, I actually heard it on the. Elaine Clark is commissioner of, what is it? It's like, commissioner of big money. Yeah, it's finance. I was thinking, so we can nail her when she's done with that job for the finance. All right, I think we're gonna get started, guys. We're actually already in session because we just came out of executive session, so. The first item on the agenda, which is number 3 at this point, are public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion but not action. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up that is not on the agenda? Okay, and then we have town reports from the town administrator. All right.
So TA report, as always, we need volunteers. We do have now a full board for Board of Adjustment and Appeals, 5 members for that. Still in need of 2 planning board members, and then there are other committees that are in need of volunteers as well. People can come into the office and ask us about those, but the planning board is really the biggest need at this point. Next week, we are having a meeting with Island Institute and Axiom. So this is a follow-up to a meeting that we had with them a couple of weeks ago about reviewing the agreement and the payment status. And so we do have one coming up on the 9th. The goal was that Axiom was going to submit and bring current. They did have a brief little meeting with our bookkeeper just to make sure they understood everything. So I'm fully hoping and expecting that we receive a check before that meeting on the 9th. So everything is brought to current and we're in good standings there. So with sheriff coverage, so we spoke with Carrie Joyce regarding the sheriff coverage for the upcoming summer. The county is short-staffed, 9 people. They do have some people that are in academy. Realistically, those individuals, by the time they're trained, it's going to be almost probably the end of summer. So right now, what it's looking at like is there's going to be a strong possibility that a full-time sheriff who has been Bob, if Bob Mailman still makes the decision to return, that his position will be split between Shebig and Long Island. We do expect to have better understanding of whether that's the case or not by April. And in that conversation, which Mark Dyer sat in with me on, we discussed that if that is going to be the plan for the summer, then it will be helpful to have Shebig, Lawn, and the county sit down and have a conversation about how that's distributed. Shebig is a little bit bigger than Lawn, so doing 50-50 might not be as even. If the sheriff lives on Shebig, then with Long Island, I would expect would financially contribute towards the housing. So there is a few quirks like that that would need to be worked out, but right now, it's not looking promising that we're gonna have full-time coverage. Unless they are able to miraculously hire some people from somewhere else. When we get more information, I'll definitely pass that on to you. Any questions so far? So GP-COG Executive Committee, so I was appointed a couple of weeks to sit on the GP-COG's Executive Committee. The committee has lacked any kind of representation from smaller communities, but especially island communities. So this is gonna be a great opportunity for us to just have some additional access to some information that we might not otherwise get. And part of that, I will be attending an all-day event tomorrow, Municipal Innovation Day in Portland. So just, and then the rest of it, I'm not gonna read it, but in the TA report, what I started putting in, and if the board doesn't find it helpful, I won't keep doing it. Any upcoming closures, nomination papers are going to be available on the 27th. We are going to have select board and school board seats, I believe too, that are gonna be up for re-election, so people can pick those up on the 27th. And then there is a list of any upcoming meetings through the month of February that we already know of. And if there is anything else, we will have it on the town website. Carol?
So I knew I'd seen it somewhere. So the February 11th meeting, it says budget meeting, second draft in capital. So I guess, what was your vision? I don't remember that we were revisiting the capital. Since we're gonna have a meeting on Saturday, I was just, what's the game plan on the 11th?
So my understanding based on my notes with that, it's to put what we've done. So it's just, I think, really for me to make sure that I have all that information from the budget discussion, from the capital discussion, that all those changes
So the capital updates will be
would
in
be,
that budget?
yes.
Okay.
So you will see any updates or any changes that would happen as a result of Saturday's meeting, that following Wednesday, that will be in front of you to see how and what impact that has to the full.
Yep. Great. So that's what I was thinking. Okay, and then, if we've got a couple reports.
There is, yeah, so there is I'm not gonna read through them, hopefully you all read through them, but there is a Public Works, and Solid Waste and Code Enforcement Officer report in there.
And on the code enforcement officer report, he did confirm that the report, he says here, it's dated January 26th, but it says the month of November has been slower. It's January. So this is the report for the month of January. That first sentence has the wrong month in it. But he did confirm that the numbers in here and everything represent January. So any questions on the TA report or the committee reports or departmental reports? Anybody?
The proposed fee schedule changes, that's something we're gonna talk
That's
about
the
some
separate agenda.
yeah, later.
Okay. So moving on from there, I think what we will do, given that we have some members of the fire department here, I think we'll move agenda item 2611 to the top so that we can go over that right now. Right. And hopefully someone's not tuning in later looking for that, but that's the game plan. As long as nobody has an objection. Okay with that? So 2611 is to authorize the town administrator to expend up to $117,000 from the fire department reserve account to purchase air packs and compressor as recommended by the fire department. So Vika, did you want to provide any background on that?
So I am going to ask that Ralph provide some background to you on that, because any information that I would give you would be information that I had received from him, so I might as well let him speak.
Okay, so we have.
Ralph, I think that.
Oh,
We don't have a report on this, is that right?
There is information.
There is a
packet.
memo and information. There's a bit of a memo on the back of that, got it.
So, yeah, we've been overdue on replacing the air packs. We got to the point where we need to. So I got bids from, IPS and Bergeron. The only two companies that sell air packs around here. We decided to go with Bergeron. They're about $10,000 cheaper than the IPS ones. They're demo units, so they're a year or two older, but they've been going through, they get the same warranty. And they actually are upgraded versions, so they have some extra features in it that the others wouldn't. And then the compressor, that was we've been put that on the agenda to replace it. But we just recently, this last time that they serviced it, it didn't pass the air quality test, so we need to replace that because they don't, there's nobody that supports the compressor, it's too old. We got it 25 years ago, probably from Freeport, when they got a new compressor, we bought it from them for very little. And we decided to go with Bergeron. Bergeron was like $2,800 more for the compressor, but we already own extrication tools that we bought from them. We're gonna get air packs from them and the compressor. So those are all things that need to be serviced annually. The compressor needs to be biannually, but so they can barge a truck over, service everything. So it'll actually save us money in the long run, cost us a little under $3,000 more upfront for the compressor. You could argue the compressor's a little better, but they're pretty evenly matched.
What's the recommended lifespan on the air tanks?
The tanks are, I think, 20 years.
Right, so ours are all at that point or close
The
to it.
packs are older than that. The packs it's 3 upgrades, and I think it's every upgrade is 3 years. Yeah, they're way outside of
Now
it.
you're talking packs, that includes the
Pack,
whole
yeah.
frame, the straps, all
Yeah,
of
the
it,
mask.
the regulator.
The bottles kind of separate. Those have a different lifespan.
Okay.
And I know you two guys know, but for everybody else's benefit, can you explain what these are for?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, so the air pack is the self-contained breathing apparatus that we put on with a mask so we can go into a ideal environment, into smoke, into your burning house. That good enough?
Yeah, and so you've asked for 8, or on this list is 8, and is that fully outfitted, or is that what you're?
That's what we have, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And we did, we tested these, we had them come out and demo each one twice. So the people that are putting them on, like it's me, kind of made the decision. It was kind of nice that everybody liked those packs, because those ended up being the cheap ones.
Does this replace all of the air packs?
Yes,
Are there any old air packs that you're still using? And
they're all old ones right now, so they'll all go away once we get the new ones.
okay, they'll completely replace the ones we have.
Completely replaced,
Got
yeah.
it, thank you.
And warranty is enough, an additional $4,000.
Yeah, I have to look, but yeah, you can get an extended warranty, yeah.
I mean, it seems to me maintenance is an important part. Do you think that's a good thing to add on?
Yeah, and we can get that, I believe, afterwards, within the first year.
Twice.
So any questions?
Yeah, how do you decide who gets to use the packs?
You have to be qualified, so you
Well,
have to
not
have
everybody.
extra training.
How many people on the department are trained with their
I think
packs?
there's 9.
Okay.
Then.
No.
Sound about right?
It's about right.
You get any value for the stuff you're gonna get rid of?
Have to pay.
They're gonna cost,
Yeah, probably.
yeah, get rid of it.
Comedic value,
Yeah,
people laugh. at
yeah,
it.
they're by, I don't wanna get into the weeds, but at NFPA standard, they're outdated, so once they've not been tested, they have to. So they have to inserviceable, destroyed, so they have to do
Ah,
something to make sure they can't be used again.
So, and then I guess the question I have, maybe more for Vika, so this account, it's coming out of what's called the fire department reserve account, but,
Correct.
and this use of funds is compatible with what that account is described at, okay. And what's the balance in that account now?
So, right now, we're going off of the most, recent numbers that we've received with all the updates from Mark. And that account is a little over 162,000. But what we need to do is we need to make proper adjustment for the interest based on what the account should have been at July 1 and, make those changes. So that number will slightly change, by going up a little bit.
So that will leave in round numbers 40-something thousand in that account. Is that right?
It would be,
We're talking 117, yeah. So it'll be, yeah. And I guess it's sort of an obvious question, but, or I mean, maybe it's a stupid question to be asking, but I remember we had this discussion when you were thinking of piggybacking on Portland purchasing and trying to get sort of a discount with that. And I guess in terms of all the priorities the department has, this is on the top of the list in terms of replacing these.
Yes,
Okay.
and that, we did get the pricing, so if this is still,
Oh, you did?
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
right.
we went with the other ones, but these are still significantly less expensive.
Okay, okay, great. Well, that's good. All right. Any other questions from the board? For Vika or for the fire department, John? Yep.
Sure. I was updating different accounts today, and I thought Andrew put 215,000 in the fire department account when he updated the dashboard.
and
So I just want to make sure that I have the numbers right for Saturday.
Agreed.
his numbers are probably more accurate than the information I'm looking at, because he's been constantly doing and updating things, and I haven't
Okay.
kept track of base camp at all the last
Yeah,
couple of
okay.
years. There's been a lot of communication in there, so I haven't even looked at what you guys have in there.
So,
Here. I would also like to say that, looking at the size of the big ticket items that are needed for a well-functioning fire and rescue, being able to see what other expenses are anticipated, and so being able to have a good sense of that. So if the big chunk of change is spent on this, what's next and next, so that to be able to have those priorities would be helpful for planning.
So on Saturday, the finance committee has a page that shows all the fire department assets and the dates to replace those.
Yeah.
And how much money they cost. And it would be great if one of you guys were here to confirm the priorities when we talk about it.
What day, what time?
Saturday, so Saturday the 7th at 9 o'clock. We're gonna go, we have a workshop on the Capitol. And so I think having somebody from the planning department there would be beneficial. So I think the board, everybody's got their questions asked, answered, and so any more questions from the public about this particular item, the air pack purchase?
Can I ask one very quick?
Yeah, you're the public.
Ralph and Doug, I think it's accurate to say that you've got the replacement of the fire truck is gonna be on there at some point still, possibly a boat and a power stretcher. My specific question, Ralph, is would the update or purchase of a new power stretcher be based on when Yarmouth upgrades their power stretcher? Thank you.
Yep, yeah, so the power stretcher is kind of a surprise. So right now, when we transport a patient, we transport over to Yarmouth. Better than 99% of the time, hand off to them. We have hand them the patient and they give us a clean stretcher and away they go. Quick, easy, safe and everything. So Yarmouth has 2 ambulances and this year they're gonna be upgrading their stretcher amongst some other things in the ambulance. And they were gonna do 1 ambulance this year and 1 ambulance next year. So when you upgrade the stretcher, they won't go into the holder that we have without adjustments. So, we can't take their new stretcher and put it in our old whole receiver, but we can take their old one. So they're gonna send different trucks at different times. So this year it's not gonna make too much of a difference because we're gonna end up having to transfer the patient from stretcher to stretcher, which isn't ideal, but we've done it in the past. We can do that. But by next year, they'll have 2 new stretchers and that's when we need to have it. And yeah, so we gotta another year to figure that out.
So that would be under discussion on Saturday.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think, given where we're at on, the air packs and the compressor, can we get a motion from somebody here?
A motion that we authorize town administrator to spend up to $117,000 from the fire department reserve account to purchase air packs and compressor as recommended by the fire department.
Second from Eliza. Any more discussion from the board? All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. That's where having money in the reserve account helps.
So when can I help?
That's between you and me, but probably it's pretty soon. You know where you're going?
I can bring the packs home Monday, if we have the money. They're ready to go, but the trucks will be like that.
Let's connect.
Okay,
The whole money part.
give me a call. Thank you.
Okay. And, just so if you, I don't think we have anything else on the agenda except down to the budget in general for the fire department, so I think that's probably good for now, all right? I'm just, if these guys disappear, I just wanna check and make sure nobody has any other questions before
Yeah,
they
I'm
leave,
gonna disappear, so.
right? Everybody good? Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Working on
What did you say?
next. Those are some of those.
Well, yeah, so let's move on to, we're taking things a little bit out of order tonight, partly to just knock them off. So 2609, to review and approve the Coastal Waters Committee recommendation to the parking and traffic ordinance. Vika, you have some comments on that?
Yes, so, with this particular agenda item, it was raised at a coastal waters meeting about allowing fishermen to be able to park at the Stone Pier and Chandler's for an extended period of time, similar to what the town has allowed for people, from the Commons and Kids Place. And so Coastal Waters took a stab at language, or emailed it to me. I read the email, I printed the information out, I put it in the packet, and then today he brought to my attention that the last sentence, he asked me not to bring it to the select board's attention until they revisited a couple times, which I did read in the email, I totally spaced and didn't keep that in my head while compiling the packet. So what I'm asking is that you just table this agenda item until Coastal Waters brings me what they would like me to bring to you, and then have it up for a discussion then.
All right.
Okay, that was quick, that was great.
Well done.
Thank you, Coastal Waters.
Thank you.
And I guess, since we're totally, moving everything around, we could potentially go to, I assume the rest of the folks in the room are probably interested in 2613, the budget, is that correct? Is there anything else people are here for besides the budget? Just so I don't make mistakes at the bitter end. All right, so I think it would make sense then to move on. Since a lot of us will see each other on Saturday, let's move on to the budget 2613, and this is to review the first draft of the fiscal year 27 budget. And does everybody have a copy or have access to a copy? And then there was a memo or introductory memo from Lisa about the budget. Anybody want a copy? Anybody need a paper copy?
Let's see your back and your doctor.
Okay, so Eva, why don't you give sort of just a brief synopsis of your memo, and I think we had some caveats about what was in this budget at the moment.
Yeah, so this budget, to me feels like it's not even really, for me, a good representation of the first draft, just because there's so much information that still we're looking into and we're, gonna need to tweak. So for example, with the fire department, I am planning to meet with them hopefully in the next week or so to go line by line to determine what the department's recommendations are for changes. I sat down with Jeff today, who sat down with the Public Works crew, and they went through in detail about the Public Works Department and then the transfer station. So with the numbers that I put in, a lot of the numbers I put in and made some changes. If you see the total budget, each department, there aren't a lot of significant changes. There are some smaller changes that I even anticipated or knew that were going to happen, or some average increases just based on the business as it goes on. But for example, after my sit down today with Jeff, the changes that I put in based on that discussion, the entire Public Works Department line item is going down by a couple $1,000s. Transfer station, after talking more thoroughly about a few items, including the brush dump, that's going up by a couple $1,000s. So looking at it, and I guess the feedback that I have is that it's a first draft and it's pretty much a draft. What I did include is in the capital, I did reach out to the finance committee and asked if they're able to provide any feedback about the recommendations that they have. And so the information in the capital is reflective of the conversation that I had with the finance committee and the information that was provided. And the purpose behind that is just through their discussions, the presentation that we had a few weeks back, they have a goal of between the debt and the capital to kind of keep it at around the $1.2 million. And so I wanted to see it as that is a major part of the total budget, that to be more closely reflective than the departmental, because with the departmental, there will be some small changes, but the overall, those items aren't gonna have an impact significantly to the entire budget. In the admin, we're looking to revisit and figure out really what we have for technology. So that's an opportunity where we might see some small changes with the department for health insurance and benefits. There might be some small changes there. I don't anticipate any significant increases because personnel and staffing hasn't changed that much. And so with the increase that we've received from the health insurance, the numbers that we have there shouldn't be much of a change. And so the debt service has been updated, and kind of I went through each department and updated it as much as I was able to based on the information I had. Also keeping in mind that we were waiting for the work that Mark did. So we put in these changes and I had a very short window to be able to provide this to you today. So there's still some work that needs to be done, but I don't anticipate any major dramatic, significant, $20,000-$30,000 changes that are gonna have a high impact on the overall budget.
So I guess I'll start with the board, and do we have specific questions on this draft of the budget? So, Eliza? I saw her
I
on.
want to go first. But are there, all right, but I will.
Yeah, no,
Are we looking at any changes with the Department 2500 Harbor Master
So in my memo, what I put about this particular department is recommending that the board revisit the job description. So a couple of years ago, there was a big push to revisit the job description. The job description was looked at, updated. It was determined with coastal waters and other input recommendation of specific hours. With the current employee that we have, they're able to give us a lot less based on other job changes. And so we just spent a year working with significantly less in that position for what the employee could give. And so I think it's a good opportunity to revisit the job description before making any dramatic changes to the department to determine whether the need on how the previous year was is good, whether it needs to be increased, decreased, and things like that. So I intentionally left this department blank as it was, because I think it would be really helpful to look at the job description to see what, if anything, transpires from that conversation to the impact of the department.
Okay, and number two, under legal expenses, I know that the cost per hour for the lawyer has gone up, am I correct?
Yep.
So does that need to be adjusted?
So I'm looking at,
Can you just say what the department number is?
Yes, 1900.
yeah, I haven't adjusted it yet. Because I'm looking at kind of the hours that we would have impact and whether there is a big enough impact with needing to increase it. And so that's like the little level of detail that might or might not. I don't anticipate that there would be a major change based on the increase in hours. But I can't give you that without feeling more confident, and I'm not there yet.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Not right now.
All right. Anybody else? Richard, do you have questions?
No comment.
I really do have one, but I didn't know how to find it. Roads, are we good with what we need to do for roads? I haven't talked to
Mhm.
everybody in the community about it, but I always feel like I don't know enough about roads, and is this,
You'll be hearing about roads on Saturday.
Okay,
So
good.
I think what this budget represents is sort of the kind of day-to-day operational budget for the town, and roads are, kind of outside of that.
okay,
Saturday, we'll be going over the roads.
thank you.
So, other than kind of small term kind of maintenance.
And there has been, when I talked to the Public Works today, and I'll pull it up so I can speak it.
Numbers
to the
then.
changes. So based on, these changes aren't reflected in your report because you did it today, so I entered it into the system today. But for routine maintenance for the general department, separate from the capital improvements and paving, you have, road materials and then sand and salt.
What number was that?
So you're looking at Department
4630.
3100, and then you're looking at 4630 is road materials.
Okay,
So Public Works recommended that we drop that down to 10,000. Sand and salt recommended dropping it down to 5,000. So for routine road maintenance and materials, there is a recommendation to drop those numbers down, recognizing that the need. What the current Public Works department is working on is working on figuring out in a fiscal year what materials are used and what are needed. Historically, there have been employees who worked kind of the opposite in terms of waiting until the end of the fiscal year to purchase the materials for the following year. And so these employees are filing it as kind of, what do we need, what are we using, and making the determinations based on that. And so from that recommendation, it was to drop it down. Same thing with coal patch, dropping that down. So for routine maintenance, they've had some recommendations that were to decrease some of the line items, recognizing that they can do it with the material that they have or what they can get for the amount they're recommending.
So a question on that is, so if at the end of the season, they're trying to stock up for the following season, right? They're trying to make sure they have everything they need prior to the season when they need it, right? So are you saying that now, how are they doing this differently? Because my understanding is like in the winter time, if you wanted to get those same materials in the winter because you didn't have enough, you'd be paying a whole lot more to get it over here.
So we, with the materials that we order, a lot of the times we're ordering it because there's been bulk purchases. So the cost of it isn't going to fluctuate as dramatically as it would for a regular consumer. So like kind of collective purchase agreements, GP does it a lot with a lot of things like sand and salt and gravel and things like that.
Right.
And so they're not ordering these materials on a reactive basis. I think it's just more thorough looking, paying attention and recognizing than it has been done in the past. And we just, we had a stockpile of material. They used it, paid attention to what they use of it and how it stretches. And then based on those decisions, we're able to predict what the need was. Versus in the past, there was some tendency to kind of want to keep the budget at the same number without it needing to be decreased. And ordering based on that process versus how they're trying to do it now.
So at the, by the beginning of the either summer or fall, they're gonna be buying all those winter materials on a bulk purchase. So it's all here on the island for that upcoming season, correct?
Not necessarily, no. With the bulk purchase is so right now, we're reaching out to GP to let them know whether we want to participate with some bulk purchase agreements for the future. So then that way we order them when we need, will still be able to be applicable to that cost that we originally agreed upon.
So it wouldn't change the cost even if we midwinter needed to
Correct.
get an order, including barging costs or whatever the. bringing
Well,
the trucks
barging costs are, if they raise them or they raise them at the beginning of the year, and that's the cost consistent
Okay.
throughout the year. Which was an increase last year, and this year I have not yet received any notification or had any communication about barging cost increases.
Okay, so in other words, we have a flexibility regardless of time of year to get materials if we get in with these bulk purchasing agreements.
Yes.
Where we've set the price.
Correct.
Okay.
Any more questions? I have a couple, so for example, I saw, law enforcement went up in part with the traffic enforcement, adding some hours there. And, I think one thing that would be helpful, that I know I could do myself, but it would be nice, maybe Andrew could do it faster, is I think we had a discussion that the additional fees that are being collected more than cover the cost of that position. So I think it would be helpful, particularly on the traffic enforcement, to have that information so that if we can sort of justify the increase in hours because we are generating more revenue to cover that, more than covers the cost of the position. And I think, there are a couple other positions that, we may want to look at. I guess there are a couple other items that we may want to look at, and for me, the ones that come to mind are like solid waste. I feel like maybe we should think it's a pretty big ticket item, and I'm wondering if we should maybe still think about increasing the fees for solid waste, or, maybe doing something differently. So this is department, I'm doing
200.
3,200.
3,200. So a couple things on solid waste. One is that, the actual wages versus the budgeted wages are a fair amount lower. And is that just a staffing, is that a representation of the amount of hours and staffing? In other words, we budgeted 45,000, but for the past several years, we've never gotten close to that, and even at, right now, we're at 21,000. And where are we at in terms of the fiscal year? We're past halfway, right? So. Anyway, I wonder also, you haven't made any specific salary, I'm not talking cost of living, but any specific position related recommended increases in salary in this budget so far?
There is, so the 4%
Right.
increase is what is in here. I did, after my conversation today, have some adjustments, which will be reflected in the information that I give you on Saturday, where there is some recommended salary adjustments. When you see that information in this report, I had given you access at one point, and I can do it again, where I put all of the budget stuff. There is an Excel document that has all of the employees and their salary and the anticipated hours, so you could see how and where that number comes from, that makes up this number. And so with the solid waste, last year, the number that was budgeted was a number that we anticipated based on the previous years. The employee put in for the hours that the transfer station was open. And so what we found out, if there were missed times where was not on the timesheet. And so this previous year, we had the employee, if they have to go to the transfer station outside of regular transfer station business hours to deal with the cans being swapped out, you put that time in. And so the number was with what we anticipated the cost was. And so you will see in the fiscal year 27, after today's discussion, it's gonna be pretty precise because we were able to look at last average hours worked, including the time that's needed for that position outside of regular business hours for the public. And that was reflected. It's not far off from what it was in the fiscal year 26 budget.
So are you anticipating also then changes, does the same department shipping, grinding,
So
barging
this
and hauling?
department, after having a more thorough conversation today, with the numbers that you'll see on Saturday, there will be an increase.
Okay,
The big increase is really, we have spent some time collecting, as in we, Jeff has done most of it, collecting quotes for companies that would be willing to do the chipping. And, it is more expensive than what we've done in the previous year. It's more in line with what we were charged the last time it was done. And so we've, now that we have a better idea of what that cost could be, that number will be better reflected. What I'll do too is, I'm not sure that I'm gonna be able to provide it to you for Saturday, but definitely for next week's discussion is I am gonna write a more thorough memo about each department, like I have done in the past, providing background information as far as why the changes between today and next week that are being implemented, what the reason behind it is, and explaining in the solid waste, the areas where there is an increase, why, and with the discussion today, we had the same takeaway as what Carol mentioned is, the revenue for last year for solid waste was $67,000, which is almost double anything we've ever collected in previous years. And so there is an increase in what's being collected, which is great. But where there is lack thereof and the cost keeps going up is the brush dump. And so the recommendation from solid waste employees and myself is going to be that come July 1st, we strongly recommend that we implement some kind of a system where, the expense that the taxpayers accrue as a result of, dumping at the brush, that we charge for that. And we're lucky enough, Jeff has taken this past year to really collect some good data. So we can very confidently now come to the board and say, this is the percentage of commercial that is taken up in the brush dump. This is residential. Two commercial people are filling up 80% of it. Those aren't the exact numbers. Those are some of the numbers that I closely to what was provided to me today. But the information in that recommendation will be supported with some actual data that Jeff has collected over the last year to make it more in line with why that recommendation will be coming to you.
So I think what would be helpful is, from last year's budget, fiscal year 26 to 27, in the memo summarizing what the changes are. And I think if you have any recommendations for, rather than just, it's hard for us to see changes in wages or positions because they're embedded in just one line. So I think, being more specific about those in the memo, either whether it's, what's changing, because we just see the bottom line number change and it doesn't always might mean we're working more hours, less hours, we reallocated or whatever. So just an explanation on the personnel side for each department, I think would be helpful. And we can, I think, sending the board a link to the salary sheet, because I think that would be also beneficial. I do think, sort of if there's a recommendation that we increase the brush dump fees or come up with a new system, it would be helpful to include that kind of contemporaneously with the budget, because it might make us, it might help us think about what we're willing to do in terms of the overall budget if we think we're gonna generate more revenue. So I think doing, not bringing that to us 3 months from now, but sort of making it part of this thing, like here's the cost of the brush dump, and we think we really need to start to, and just like what you just said, but doing it as part of this process, not later, would make sense to me. And then, so I think in particular, I think there are some, the position at the, and some of these positions are split between two departments, just like the school does, so it's not always clear what's going on. So I think just letting us know about that would be good. On the solid waste specifically, I guess I noticed hazardous waste has been bumped up. I guess one thing I really want to advocate for, because it's been like 5 years now, is having a hazardous waste day where there's a collection of hazardous waste for the community. Because otherwise it goes into the waste stream or who knows what else. And I just think it's overdue that we should have that. But on the flip side, and I know this was a practice previously, I don't know how it works now. I want to be sure the town is charging adequately for special waste that we might be collecting, and that we're not misclassifying any waste as, say, hazardous waste when it could be disposed of as special waste. And it's sort of a subtle thing, but it can generate a lot of cost. And so at one point I found out we were taking paint from contractors and disposing of it. And that's not, we shouldn't be doing that for free, I guess is what I'm thinking. So
We are not.
right. So, but I guess the relationship between some of these costs and what we're charging for fees, and I know I'm pretty certain Jeff could probably provide that without too much difficulty. He probably knows. But it helps us assess, like, okay, the hazardous waste budget's going up to 9,000, but we actually collect like $6,000 in fees. So I think that little bit of information, and you could put it on each department to provide, that would be helpful. And things that we do charge fees for, and I think that's gonna fall heavily onto solid waste in particular, because that's where, and, code enforcement, Paul recommended some increases, but I think that would be the other place where I would kind of look at that, and, so anyway, I really think we need to have the police day. I don't know, the cost is like $5,000. But I think it's, I said it last year, I'm just gonna say it again, but
All of your suggestions are everything we discussed today, and one of the conversations that we had was hazardous waste and bulky weekend is gonna come up. And so Jeff is gonna spend some time while he's at the transfer station this weekend compiling that information for me, and I will provide all that information to you in a memo. My goal is to do it for next Wednesday's meeting. But that depends on when I get the information, so.
and so. Obviously, we'll talk about capital separately, but, and then the school budget, is it just last year's budget?
The school budget has not been adjusted at all, it's last year's budget, and Aaron knows that we are in the budget process, they're just starting their process, and so, when he feels like he can provide me information, he will. And then we do have a meeting with the school coming up, in a couple of weeks.
And right now, the health and life insurance number is the same as last year, so are you not expecting any? I know that the staffing's been stable, but are you not expecting an increase in health insurance rates?
The health insurance rates have gone up as of January 1st. And I did kind of preliminary numbers like I have in the past, but just like with technology, with this being such a larger item, I'm kind of digging a little bit deeper in it than I have in the past to try to bring as more concrete number to you as it can. I think with all the discussions that we've had with Mark, the over budgeting, I'm trying to focus a lot more in certain items that are heavily budgeted. And that number is, I could have recommended it based on the increase and based on the graph that we kind of use, but I just recognizing that we've over budgeted the last couple of years, I'm trying to find ways to cut places and not just make the recommendation like I have in the past, so. It's making it seem like I do, for this budget draft, I feel very unprepared, just because I know there's so much more information that you need that I'm trying to provide that isn't here today.
But do you think you'll be able to, the next time we review the budget based on, would be the 11th, right?
A week from today,
And
yes.
so do you think you'll?
So I know my goal is to provide definitely updates to fire department, solid waste, public works, provide memos with that based on the changes. And then provide some information that you've asked today, and then see some of the departmental departments that haven't seen any changes, like the insurance one. Try my best to incorporate some of that. It's ambitious, seeing as that's a week from today, but that's my goal.
Yeah,
So
I
if
guess,
you don't get any replies from me from emails, that's the problem.
well, and I guess just if you could make that your priority between now and then, because otherwise I'd wanna reschedule. I mean, not reschedule the meeting, but hold off on the budget review until it's really as close as we can get, so.
No, my goal is really kind of to just abandon for the time being everything else, just recognizing that we already did delay this.
Yeah.
And so it's making me a little fancy, and so I wanna get that information out to you sooner than later.
The insurance stuff, that's just getting the new quotes, updated quotes from the,
Well, they're on a calendar year, we're on a fiscal, we're on.
Yeah, so we have numbers from now until,
December.
in 6 months, but then those numbers change, so we kind of predict an increase, and so It's worked. Okay, but because it's such a higher increase last year due to personnel changes and more people taking on the benefits. We had employees that never participated before in the retirement and the match, which a couple employees signing on to that makes a difference and it's offered. It's just we've got people that didn't want to participate. And so those numbers, I'm trying to take a closer look at making sure that I feel confidently, not just giving you kind of the average and what the predicted costs are and more concrete to what they are. Ultimately trying to find areas where we can cut a little bit, really.
And do you remember what the increase was going into January of 26 for the health insurance?
I think it was 12%.
Oh,
It was high.
Yeah,
I think it was 12%, but
was that more than what we predicted? Probably.
I'd have to double check. I looked at so many numbers today that, I can't give you that exact number.
Yeah, I would expect it.
The last couple of years, the health insurance costs
sure.
they were pretty good for a couple of years, but they've been over 10%, and so that just really has an impact.
So, before we move to public questions, any more questions from the board? Yep.
I do have one more, and it has to do with the brush dump. I know that a lot of trees are being marked by CMP for tree removal, and we're also looking at the ash borer issue. And I'm wondering, is all that going to the wood dump, the brush dump, and just saying. And so I know that there's not an answer right now, but that's a question I have
That's
just
a great question.
Well,
looking
we
at
are looking at, the climate action team has been looking at burning the wood waste.
the air curtain burner.
Yeah,
That was
well,
my-
we had it in order to get the evaluation, it has to generate energy, but anyway, you'll be hearing about that in the spring, and we think that might be part of the solution.
Okay, do we need to anticipate any of that here?
Don't, yeah, good question, I hadn't thought about that, I don't think so. I don't think it would be that quick.
Okay,
And we try to find some outside money, but it's one of the things we're evaluating because not only is the cost to come in and ship, then there's the cost to transport. It's really a pretty big chunk of change. And so we're looking at a biochar generator, which has some potential environmental benefits. So,
as opposed to the air curtain burner.
yeah, which just makes ash. So, it's Aldrich's.
Okay.
Aldrich project, we'll be hearing about it, but I think trying to reduce the biomass problem would be huge.
Because we're facing more of it.
Yeah, has a CMP, historically, the CMP tree removal been like any other tree removal, it's gone to the brush dump?
Well,
Or is it?
first off, I can't answer that question, but I believe there are a lot more trees we've ever seen before that are being marked.
But I don't think I don't know that they typically take it to the brush dump.
Yeah, usually they just chip it up,
They just kind of.
Take it down where it is.
they drop it in the yard.
I even remind them.
So I think, good question, I think it's something we have to kind of keep an eye on, but that's a big cost in our solid waste.
And
Yeah.
wildfire problem.
Right, there's many aspects of that, which is why even though it was a very unpopular E-tip project, that's what we did.
I did get contact information from Lucas, from CMP, from Lenny for Lucas Tree, and, my plan was to connect with them, which I think I might put our new GP cog fellow on it. To, just connect with CMP because they have certain jurisdiction of what they can and cannot remove, and so. I can suspect, especially in the springtime, some people are gonna be coming to the island realizing that there's a lot of trees in their properties that are being taken down, they might not like it. And so for two reasons, one is, cause we were told that it was gonna happen and it's gonna be at a bigger mass than it's happened before, so it's far more taking, and so. The questions that I'm looking to get answered from them is, what the process is, because I think it would be good as a municipality to really put that out to our residents, to let them know that all the trees that are being marked on your property, CMP has a right to take down and they will take down. And then what the process is when they take it down, whether it's gonna have a direct impact on the resident and those trees are just sitting there, or whether they're gonna chip a lot of them, whether they're gonna go to the transfer station, so.
Hmm.
That is definitely something on our radar to take care of.
Thank you, a lot of questions. So we've got the GP cog on it. That's good.
So I think next I'll open up the questions to the public on the budget. So we're still talking about the first draft of the budget. And so I think if the public has any questions or comments, feel free. Anybody? Or
Not a huge one, but I just wanted to sort of make sure that we understand with coastal waters, got my coastal water hat on. That the public services group has taken on more of a role in maintaining the infrastructure on a daily basis, and they've been doing, a better job. We've been doing more of it. And I noticed that we spent, over $1,500 so far this year, and that's all we have in there for next year. Not a lot of money, and I don't know how much more there'll be, small, and it's a small
1,500.
number in a big department, so it may not be a big deal.
for what? 1,500?
Public Works marine supplies,
Public work, yeah. marine
Okay.
supplies,
I didn't know what you were talking
3120, sorry, 31.
31, say it again?
2120 marine
Okay.
supplies, the equipment that was used to purchase in, this year's budget, that has been expended is a metal plate for Cousins Island that went under the ramp. And so we did put in, after today's conversation, Public Works would like to, do the same replacement at the Snow Pier. And so there is money being reflected after today's discussion in, next
Okay.
year's budget for that.
Fine, I just want to recognize that they're doing more, they're doing great, we'd love to see it. We need support in the budget for it. And the other piece is the roads, which I hope happens, the drainage, which is 4605, culverts and drainage, I think was where it come from. But this culvert out here that needs to get fixed, hopefully in this budget season. But if not, we need to make sure we can do it in the next budget season.
Yes, I emailed the information that I had to the town attorney about seeing whether we can, get some, wait, never mind, that's for, the other area. This area, we are waiting for kind of a couple things to be completed with GEI before they take that on. Once we have a good recommendation, then, hopefully we'll be able.
Just want to make sure there's
that.
money in there for it. That we don't get caught on something like that.
And I have a question for coastal waters before we leave. One is there any benefit to kind of segregating the marine infrastructure costs? Either as a separate, maybe not a department, but a kind of just keeping track of the costs.
In the operating budget?
Yeah,
Um,
in other words, we have contracted services in here, right, for the, flows.
Installation and removal.
yeah,
It's just that we're gonna start with a lot of these infrastructure projects and I just didn't know, I mean, then,
I think it could stay in the public works, but as long as they're expressed clearly and. I mean, coastal water doesn't really have anything to do with the operating budget, we don't.
well, you provide direction to the public works department, so you sort of do impact the operating budget. And lots of times the recommendation to do something comes through you guys, so I would,
The new flow that we've worked out isn't supposed to do that, but the new flow is supposed to go through the harbor master.
agree. So I think we need to, that's one reason we need to review the harbor master position, because it's not really described that way right now.
Yeah,
So anyway, okay, well, I just wanted to ask that way you were up there. All right.
My recommendation would be to move that to the harbor master department.
To move what?
The
Contracted
the
services?
Contracted services for floats and kind of keep the marine stuff
Agreed.
as closely, so the public works. Is ideally hoping to play less and less of a role in terms of they're not physically pulling them out and putting them in. And
That makes sense.
this year, there was a lot of just communication and coordination and. I think depending on what the board sees for a harbor master, job description and how it stays or changes. I think that it's appropriate to have a harbor master position be the position that is coordinating the communication efforts with the contracted service. And so, that would be my recommendation, but I think looking at that position and job description first is the first step.
And I would, yeah, to me, then before we finalize the budget, it would make sense to move it in there. Okay. All right, thanks. Anybody else?
I'm dismissed.
Oh, just on Public Works, they filled out a non-capital.
Okay, give us
purchase-
3,100, right?
Yep,
Right.
Yep,
they filled out a non-capital purchase request for a polycaster
that's what
for
I,
$8,000 or $9,000. Is that in there?
Yes.
Right?
So 3,100, and so. After today's discussion, there's some changes from today's discussion that were recommended is kind of, which in the greater scheme of things doesn't matter, but 15. They're trying to do a better job at equipment maintenance, what is equipment maintenance and what is vehicle maintenance and kind of separating that. And so in the next round, what you'll see is the vehicle parts, which historically there hasn't been anything. This year, we're putting money in that and we're changing that to vehicle maintenance, so there'll be a recommendation for. This is a far longer explanation that you were asking for, changes there.
What line item?
So for Public Works, they did request a one-time purchase, $8,500 for the equipment that sits on the back of the pickup truck, the yellow thing that spits out sand. That is reflected in 3,100, 3040.
right, 30, yeah, 30.
It's in there, and then in addition to that, they have, through our conversation, there is a need for some tire replacements, which is about a $2,300, well, an expense, which is reflected in that number as well. And then next round of this report, you'll see those separated, and that will be better explained in the memo that I provide with that document.
So to your point, the big ticket items are a one-shot deal,
Yeah,
but are
right.
below the capital number are in the budget.
Yeah, so it's highlighted in here, so next year.
It will be removed.
Right.
Yes.
So, and I have a question while you're up is, like, say all the fire department requests, everything that's a capital request, does that show up in the reserve account allocation only? Is that where, so if somebody's looking for a new, I don't know, $100,000 item, where that gets budgeted for the next fiscal year would be in the reserve account allocation. It doesn't show up anywhere else in the budget, right?
It's the way it should be,
Right.
correct, yeah.
Just for
And
the
the
board's
the
benefit.
polycaster.
Follow that? Everybody get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the polycaster actually showed up on the dashboard
Ah,
as a capital asset, so
Yeah.
that's why it was on my mind.
okay.
The one exception with that is debt service. So
Okay,
if-
yeah, that's
And
right.
so the department, which is debt service department, those are
Right.
more or less capital investments that the town has made through bond bank or through, a loan that they're paying over a time. So,
And then the capital page, I didn't get it when I looked at the
Oh, no.
documents and the attachments. I saw it printed out, but when I looked online,
Yeah, I didn't see it.
it didn't show up.
No way. It
And-
was in my
and,
version.
Doug Ross didn't see it either, so.
Oh, well, we'll make sure it's in,
So will we have that page for
It's page-
Saturday?
it's page 34. You guys don't have it?
If we had a few copies of that page, or,
Well,
yeah,
do you have it there?
well, that's,
Yeah.
that's Chris's copy.
Well, this is the copy that was from, well, we got this from our packet.
Yeah.
but it's not online in the packet?
I don't think
number
so.
34,
Page 34 is from 33 to 35.
Oh, jeez.
He just didn't want you to see.
How is that even possible?
Just like your contract.
I don't know, it was 6 p.m. on a Friday when I was uploading.
All right, got it.
Just,
We'll make sure it's
sorry.
in there.
So in reference to capital, Andrew has a meeting tomorrow with Mark. What they're gonna do is they're gonna kind of try to bring us as current as possible with where our capital expenditures need to be, the numbers. Knowing that for Saturday, we would like that information, and so, my plan is on Friday to try to take that information and put it into Trio. Andrew is also working with Mark. What we're gonna do going forward, and once everything is organized, because Trio does not show capital unless it's only the ones you're anticipated to expend it and not a whole list. We're gonna start presenting the board with an Excel document that will show all of them with the appropriate dollar numbers, but then seeing coming and goings of it, and then seeing what the anticipated is, so you get a better, clearer picture in one document versus looking at the Trio document, which only shows what you're budgeting, the bank document, which apparently isn't the document we should be referencing too closely to, so that's kind of.
That would be.
We'll have the information to the extent that we can by Saturday. On Friday morning, I'm gonna incorporate all these changes and then email the board updated information. And then I think after Saturday, for the next meetings, we hope to really have, better information.
So I would ask that you also email everybody in this room, because
Yeah, so I made some changes to the capital recommendations based on changes that I saw that Mark and Andrew had.
Yes,
So if they're making the reserve balances. So if they're making further changes,
right, we'll just have to go.
we'll have to be doing some tap dancing on Saturday.
I think Saturday will be, where we're at, we'll start from there, and then we'll probably revisit that. Not in a week, but maybe in a month, and sort of do another update. I mean, it is partly the function that Mark is trying to nail this down, but it's generally good news what he's been coming up with, so it's better than bad news. But, okay. But I think even when you send the budget out to the board, please send it to the finance committee and also Mark and her, since they're the kind of extended team here. And then, I would post it on the website even,
Yeah.
and it would be helpful if we could bring a few I prefer to look at paper copies.
I promise to be quick.
You don't have to be quick, it's your thing.
You've never had this problem, Stan.
First of all, I appreciate the effort by town administrator, the departments and the select board to get down through the operational department line by line to try to see where things can be changed or shaved or, and that just shows a level of commitment that I don't believe we've had in a long time in this town, so I appreciate that. Second of all, usually the training lines are not the big expense lines. I'll just use public work, public services, public works, and the transfer station as two examples. I hope that there's enough in there being budgeted so that they can take advantage of the training programs that MDOT and the state of Maine will offer those types of departments. The third point is, the harbor master and shellfish position department. If we're going to be revisiting / rethinking that department, I wonder if coastal water should be asked for a recommendation or input if they so feel that they'd like to do that. And my last one is, I agree that the transfer station is going to become more of an expense and more of a operational managerial problem for us as time goes on. But it's really operating very well at the moment. And if we're going to add, more fees up there. For something like the brush dump. I don't necessarily disagree looking at that. I just wonder if we should go talk with some other local towns to see how they're handling those type of situations and whether they're using a ticketing system or some sort of a more efficient way for people to pay and not have to look for checkbooks and write it down and do the old fashioned way. And I hate to say it, but if we ever get close to pay per bag, I know a couple of towns that have a fee that you pay each year just to have the privileges of using the facility. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, and I think Jeff did quite a bit of research on what other towns were doing in brush and what they were charging, so I think he's got all those contacts if he wants to. I think we'll look to Jeff to kind of make some recommendations on that. And it's a double whammy on an island, the brush, so.
Yeah.
And I do think Eliza's right, it's not gonna diminish.
And I'm sorry I didn't say this, but I would be glad to take a field trip with Jeff Westcott sometime to go talk with another town too, if he would like to do that.
Yeah, he's done a lot of work. He's talked with a lot of towns. We've met, last year with the company about like the paper bag thing and, tried figuring out whether it was worth implementing it or not. With the hazardous waste, he's done a lot of research around, the costs and, the cost of, so the numbers that, especially after the memo and the changes that I bring to you, are as confident and detail oriented as they've ever been.
Just a thought, I mean, when we're talking about the shipping service, we might wanna consider contracting services to ship in place. Rather than have people bringing stuff into the brush dump and stuff and having to haul it off. Because a lot of places, at least a lot of the properties that have wooded areas, you can ship in place right into those woods and let it decompose there. We save ourselves some expense and, but obviously somebody'd have to do that work. It probably wouldn't be for the most part property owners, but. That may be a service that
Somebody would provide.
somebody could provide.
Yep.
Well, I just wanna go on record for saying, I like wood chips. Doing a public education about the fact that wood chips keep ticks, it's good tick prevention. I spread a lot of wood chips on my property because ticks find me very easily. And, so I think having a program where people can agree to take wood chips is the way to go. I had 3
That's good.
truckloads dumped at my house.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Just gonna say,
I'm
oh, yeah,
gonna get
gotta
off
go.
I think the wood waste management is a big issue, and I do think we do need some help on that, and so.
Okay.
We'll come back, the climate action team's been working on some options, I think that's a bigger conversation. Fortunately, it kind of wraps into the wildfire thing too,
Yep.
so. I agree, and so I think, but in terms of the operational budget. Before we leave it, then are there any more questions or any, I think one thing I'd like Vika to do, if there's some specific you would like information on, like I did ask sort of what's the ratio for the. For the traffic enforcement versus the fees that are required, so we can alert the public that, by the way, this position pays for itself. So. Is there any other questions like that, information that you want that Vika can provide at the next meeting? All right, it's gonna be enough just to get this done, but if there's other things you want, obviously you can email her, but I think, if you have specific questions to support your decision-making on the budget,
Yes,
send
there
them
is.
to her.
I'd like to-
And it's important that there are some, folders online that she has shared and will continue to share, and it's important you look at those, and if you're having issues getting into them, then we need to solve that problem, that's a different problem. So,
Yeah, I would like to be able to look at wages for staff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not private information, it's just easier to share in that manner. Okay.
What I'll do is when I email you on Friday, I will email you with the links
With the link.
attached to those folders. If you could. I mean, I know it's gonna be, I'm gone all day tomorrow from 8 AM to 8 PM for, town related stuff. And so Friday morning is when I'm gonna be focusing on that, hoping to get that to you by mid-morning on Friday. And so if you could take a look at that and then, you know, shoot me a text if you have to let me know that you can't access that. If you can't access that, what will be online will be the packet. But while it is public information, I don't wanna put all of those nitty gritty details, just because I do wanna respect the employees whose information is all in it. So if somebody wants to come in and request it, great, I can provide it to the board, but I don't, you can easily figure out who is who, and so I don't wanna blast it to everybody. So if you can't get it, let me know, and I'll try to provide it for you, so then you can be as prepared for Saturday as you can.
Okay. So moving on to, we have a couple other items still on the agenda here, and I think, why don't we go back to the comprehensive plan process? So we have 22607, which is to review and provide feedback on the comprehensive plan process. And then 2608 to discuss the formation of the ad hoc comprehensive plan committee. So Loren has been working with Vika and myself on this, and there's a memo in the packet. We tabled this last week because she subsequently met with the planning board and has incorporated the planning board's comments into the revision of the memo. So this is a revised memo than what was in your packet a few weeks ago. So I just will open it up in terms of the first issue. The first item is the comprehensive plan process, which she describes here in this first memo dated January 16th, 26. So I think Vika and I are both pretty familiar with what she came up with. So if anybody has any questions, you can ask them.
Boy, am I glad she's on board.
What did you say?
Am I glad we have Lorette?
Yeah, and
Looking at this plan.
she's traveling, was that?
She is traveling this afternoon, and she is gonna be working remotely for a couple of, days, so unfortunately, she wasn't able to be here. She was eager to wanna be here, but I reassured her that there's more than enough information. And I didn't foresee any major issues, and I would let her know first thing in the morning how it went.
And I would say the primary change that the planning board recommended was the change in the composition of the committee, not so much about the process. I will say we met with the town of Long Island and we met with the state Office of Community, whatever, planning. This is a super ambitious schedule. It's gonna be challenging to meet it. And so it's gonna take a lot of her time and it's gonna require kind of sticking to the schedule. But the other flip side of that is that, you know, the compound process has to be a community driven process, and the community has to decide what the priorities are for the community. And that's one reason it takes so long, because you have to interact back and forth with the community. So, and the other towns in our midst, it's taken most of them 18 months to 2 years to do this. So I think she feels up to the challenge, so we'll support her. The other thing that came up in the whole process is typically the fellows that have done some of these in other towns have done a lot of the GIS work. I think Loren doesn't feel like she has that skill set, I would guess, and so I guess we're gonna, we'll have to think about how we're gonna provide that. Probably we would use Viewshed, who's our GIS provider, but that's gonna have an expense, and so that will have to go into the next budget in terms of, there's probably a little bit of money still in this budget, but so we'll need to pay for some GIS services, which I don't think is really outlined here. And I don't quite know how much that will be, but the goal would be to minimize it's not gonna have a monthly meeting cadence or even bi-weekly when I worked on the plan. So the meetings will be less frequent. The comprehensive plan committee is an advisory committee to to her as she will be doing most of the writing, unlike in the past where the committee did a lot of the writing. So I think that's a major difference, is that she'll be doing the primary writing and with oversight and review by the committee. So that's it in a nutshell. Any questions on that process? So a lot of communities hire outside planning consultants with the regional planning commission, so that's the function she's filling
Right.
for us.
Yeah, we're on.
Is the outside service. Okay, moving on to the committee structure, this is the committee charge. So this would be an ad hoc committee, which means it's a temporary committee. It doesn't have an ordinance that defines it. And the major change that we made, or Loren made, based on meeting with the planning board, is sort of the composition of the committee itself. So right now, she's recommending representative from the planning board, the select board, fire and rescue, and the Shabig Island School Committee. And then also the town administrator, as an advisor.
What did they say to change it? Or the planning board? What, they offered some additional.
So originally she had a much more extensive list of sort of advisory participants. And they felt that was way too big, and I would tend to agree. I think honing it down makes more sense. It's easier to manage. And and we, at that meeting, they kind of, they focused on, in particular, sort of representation from town committees. So this is an additional responsibility that people on these committees would take on for the period of the comp plan, but nothing like what it was in 2010. I think that's the major change. And I did get some feedback from the code enforcement officer, who felt pretty strongly that we should have a member of the Board of Appeals represented, because they're the ones who see kind of the problems with our land use ordinances, because people are coming and, for an appeal. And he said it's common in his experience to have them participate in the comp plan process. The other thing he said is he would like to be involved and informed and could attend meetings. He doesn't think he should be on the committee, but he would like to be in an advisory capacity when it comes to the topics that he's relevant to, which is land use. So I will pass that on to Loren. I don't think it changes this description at all. And then the only other thing, and actually Herb mentioned it to me, but I felt the same, is I kind of think this is all existing standing committees that are populating this committee, and I think we should have some representation from, at large, from the general public, at least one person. And I would be inclined to just, instead of saying 1 to 2, make this one person from each of these committees, because we probably can't get 2 anyway. And then potentially having 2 people at large, so that we're not looking like we're trying to, control it in terms of the municipal boards. And that we do get some outside interest, and those we could solicit. And I know this is different than what Loren had in mind, but I do think it's important to get some people that aren't in the inner circle, so to speak. Like us, because we're so brilliant. But I don't want the community to feel excluded.
I think this feels exclusive of the community.
Right.
And having this be a smaller number, while it can make the committee run more concisely, this is so important to have community involvement and engagement. So I think that lack of at-large members stands out as really important. May I make a suggestion that if this is the membership, that maybe coming up with other ways that members of the community can be involved as.
Oh, well, I think that's in the description of the process.
Yeah, one thing you gotta keep in mind is if you look at I do wanna take a moment and I think provide a little feedback on behalf of Loren. The purpose, she did have it far larger, like Carol had said, but the planning board recommended it to drop it down to a smaller number with those recommendations. But keeping in mind that there's gonna be a big emphasis and focus on community meetings and community engagement. With the community meetings, staggering them on specific topics, so you're not just talking about everything and anything. So transportation, and that's when you reach out and seek feedback from the transportation company. And bodies that are specifically involved and would have valuable feedback for them. So not excluding people from the feedback, but pulling feedback from them at an appropriate time and recognizing that the general manager of CTC does not need to sit on this committee for the entire decision-making process, and it's more funneled and really using them when their topics are important, so.
Okay.
She did make sure that that was gonna be inclusive, and that was one of her concerns in making it smaller, that the community would feel like they're not being included, so.
So I would suggest having opportunities listed for categories of ways that the community members can be involved.
Well, she's got that in the process.
And
Did you look at the?
I did, but I think I would
I mean,
think
any,
more,
I would say any committee is open to the public.
okay,
So people can come, and people do, I mean, these guys do, look at, they're here at the select board meeting.
For example.
But I,
Really, you get a life.
I think that if you think back to the stone pier, we had those charrettes, so to speak, on the stone pier that were topical. People participated, but not the same people on every one, because, you know, there was one that was commercial fishing, there was another one that was something else. So I think that's the vision she has in mind. I think it's important that I'm just gonna say, don't bog down the process too much with a huge group of people. Because, and the role of this committee is probably different than what some comprehensive plan committees are, where they're kind of oversight and review of the work that she is doing, but she's doing most of the work, is the way I would put it. The committee is the guidance, but not the workers.
It's like a
And so-
steering committee, really.
A steering committee, well, she calls it an advisory committee, same idea. So.
But I think there will be a lot more public engagement than, you know, than you realize. And then she really wants to advertise and make it available to people and have like office hours, so if anybody in the town doesn't feel comfortable going to a public meeting or a public, you know, engagement discussion, that they can come in one-on-one and give her feedback. So she's, I think, very aware of making sure that everyone feels included, and she wants to provide different avenues and how that could be done. Knowing that not everyone is gonna feel comfortable sitting in a public meeting, being recorded, talking about what they think priorities are.
okay. I'll go with that. I still feel that having it be listed, the ways and the responsibilities that people can be involved. Perhaps not on this committee, because I do like having small committees small enough to get things done in a concise way, but I think that I've heard a lot of conversations with people that have said, oh, I want to get on that committee. I'd like to be involved, and if it's not in this, having it be more than, well, then just show up with these charrettes or however it is.
Well, if we get a lot of feedback, I mean, the next step is for us to decide what
Okay.
this committee, if we wanna approve this or not. And then if people come out of the woodwork saying like, well, we don't like this, then we can revisit that.
Then we have another category of jobs that people can do. But
Having been on the last comp plan committee, it was down to 4 people in the end. It started off with 20 people, we were down to 4. And, you know, that's a very common practice, is what happens if people peel off. And I also think the role is different than what it was historically, and if people I think we do need people participating in the meetings, what the vision is of the future, and there are maybe specific tasks that they can help with. But one of the challenges with the comp plan is you get this herd of people all having their own agendas and ideas, and it becomes unmanageable. And our goal is to get this done. It doesn't mean that we can't continue the conversation about kind of what our future looks like. So, I think I think we're trying to come up with something that balances how manageable it is with also just getting it done and not killing people in the process.
Okay, I'm on.
All right,
I'm good.
so I do have a couple questions though. How do people feel about the number of members on each planning board, select board, fire and rescue? I'd be happy with just saying one, because I think we'll be lucky to get one. And then, the other part is about at-large members, and if so, how many?
And how are they selected?
They would apply, and the select board would select them from the applicants.
We're gonna plan on sending out emails to select board, planning board, school. A lot of these expected individuals, like the planning board, they already know that this
Right.
is coming their pipe. She had emailed the superintendent, so the individuals or the groups who are expected to participate more or less already know that that's gonna be coming their way. They will make the decision among themselves who they want to send as the representing body for this particular process. But to make sure that we do the process start to finish like we do with all the other communities and be transparent and be streamlined with the process. We will still seek the applications from all of them. You will appoint them all. And then I think having two members with at large is a great idea, and those people, whoever, if there are any applicants, we have lots of committees who no one's applying for, so those will come to you. And you'll decide an executive session to appoint those people as you please.
Okay, and if nobody applies,
Those are
fine.
empty.
Okay, so one of the, should, because we rely really so heavily on the finance committee, should there be an opportunity for someone from the finance?
So we
committee?
talked about coastal waters, we talked about the finance committee, and our thinking was that there are some topics that probably should participate in, but maybe not asking them to even though their meetings
Okay.
are supposed to be contained. I guess I would ask the coastal waters committee or the finance committee how they feel.
Oh,
Is that?
I can't speak for the whole commission, obviously, but for coastal waters, but I think that there's another mechanism that's discussed here, which is these focus groups.
Okay.
And that's where I think we would
Right,
come into play.
Okay.
so marine issues, coastal waters will come into play, harbor master, that kind of thing. David, sorry, you've had your hand up for a while.
I think cutting it back to one piece of the listed groups here, the four groups
Yeah.
here. And then adding four at-large positions to really leave it open for any of the
Okay.
other groups.
That's half and half.
That's half and half.
So are we saying, we're gonna say 1 or 2 or 1 to 2?
I think having it just be I don't think we should give people the option. I think saying one, and I gotta say, this is sort of an assignment from the select board. Once, if we approve this, we're telling these committees, we want you to send somebody. We can't shoot them if they don't, but I think it is kind of requiring them.
Yeah.
I think the at-large appointments or, requests, it's whether people show up or not, and come in. And so I think. So David's let's see, David's recommending 4, I recommended 2. And, I think the planning board in particular was worried about the committee getting too big. I think the number they used was like 6. So I guess we can, whatever people, I'm not
What if
gonna
you do 2 to 4, because if you do 4 at large and we don't get 4 people, then we're operating as a board without the full capacity based on what the committee or charges. But maybe if you do 2 to 4, then you still have that flexibility. If you only get 3 people, you're not then in the position where you are one person short type of situation, kind of needed somewhere in the middle.
Does that work?
Yeah, that's really good.
All right. All right, so any more questions from the board?
None.
All right, public?
I just want to comment on that topic. You could, and you may want to, for continuity's sake and for practicality's sake, allow committees committees are gonna submit a name, you're not gonna approve that, right? They're gonna send what they want.
The 4 committees that are listed here are going to identify somebody.
Right, okay, and so you're gonna select the at-large people from some process.
The at-large people will advertise just like we always do, and whoever applies, we review.
You might want to allow the committees to pick a person and an alternate, so that if that first.
I know, we thought about that.
Because it's not a judicial thing where you're gonna be doing, this is like community.
But I do think I talked to Lorraine about that directly, and I think substituting people when they're not meeting that often and they kind of need, I think this group does need to be stable. Because they're kind of like the steering committee as Earhart said, and once you start switching people in and out, it's
Okay.
not as good.
Okay, the other thing I just want to point out is that, yeah, and you said it at the beginning, it's a very ambitious schedule. And the writing of document and how that gets reviewed and processed is kind of missing out of the schedule. You have the last committee meeting November, and you send the comprehensive plan to the state in December. So theoretically, it gives you less than a month to write this document, review it with the
Yeah.
committee, and have you guys approve it.
And what I think Lorraine has put in a separate kind of directive to the committee is how that process would work, and a lot of the review would be done, not by meeting in person, like being done by sharing documents online and
So you
taking.
don't say,
Well, she did.
I always figure how to get anything done in November, thinking about Christmas.
I agree, but, and it probably won't get done in November, but this is the tentative schedule. I do think once the committee is created and meets, they will have, this is,
Yeah,
that's up to the committee to decide how to operate. And so the committee will have to elect a chair, and the chair would work with Loren to kind of figure out that process. But her vision of the process, which is kind of how the climate action team worked, is to share documents, provide comments online, not necessarily meet, finalize a draft, and then maybe do something with it. But it didn't require meetings. And so that's not how we worked in the past. And so I think she's trying to streamline that part of it by doing it kind of online. And I think that's a good practice.
thank you.
But I appreciate that. And I'll just say, anybody can go to these meetings, so it's not like they're closed to the public. So the only difference is, I think, the advisory committee may from time to time have to make a vote or make a decision on what's final acceptable, that kind of thing.
Are we welcome to? We just never know what's so well, because
So are we deciding tonight,
I would like to,
number and
We
who's
decide-
on? She's gotta catch the.
oh yeah, so we should, I think if people are okay with those changes, I think we should vote on this because Elijah Jane has to get at it. So, can I have a motion? If, are people okay or?
You know what, I'm okay with it,
All right,
not just because I'm leaving on the 8th.
so I need a motion.
You want me to do it? You do.
May I make,
You're much.
I have to get my glasses back.
Oh,
Motion,
I think you could say,
well,
accept.
no,
it as
let me do it all by
amended.
myself here.
So you could say just to accept,
26008.
yeah,
Okay, to,
Except the ad hoc committee,
accept the ad hoc committee with one already,
As
Just-
written
as written,
with
with one.
the recommended.
Yes, thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Yep,
All right.
gotta go. I wanna thank you all for letting me out the door.
And, sorry, I really appreciate that your select board duty got the best of you and you showed up.
That's the impression.
Carol, second on that, I didn't catch it.
Richard. All right,
Thank you.
good. I think that's good. All right, so moving on, I think the other thing, 2610 is to review the committee reports, which Pika did put in the packet. And so these are the standing, and Herb, why don't you stick around for just a minute, because I have a question.
Just gonna muster our forces over here.
Oh,
Warmer.
Yeah.
so these are the committees that are either standing committees, which means they go on forever unless we change things and they have an ordinance that governs them. And then there's ad hoc committees like the one we just approved, which is is expected to be a temporary committee unless we develop an ordinance to make it permanent. The finance committee is one that presumably will someday be a permanent committee. John asked that we not constrain them at the moment.
Okay, that's good to hear.
So have people had a chance to review the committee reports? This is something new that we've done, and it was partly because there was so much confusion about who was actually on the committee and when their appointments expired. And then also just trying to find out what everybody's up to.
Yeah, I appreciated this format. This is good. Huge.
And also like
Readable.
making sure that people's names are correct, because
Yeah.
we had websites that weren't correct, and we put it on the committee chair to fill these out. And like the climate action team filled it out collectively, and then I reviewed it. But I don't know how I don't know how Coastal Waters did it, how did they fill it out?
As secretary, I filled out sort of the top part of it, the kind of, that I got from I really just took it out of our ordinance off the website. And then I put people in there, and then, Justin filled out all the rest of it, Justin filled out. So I guess I helped him, he and I did together what we accomplished, we went through the minutes and talked about what we accomplished, and then he did the rest of it, like what the goals were and what worked and what challenges there were, he did all that.
And I think, part of it is to inform us about what the committees are up to and how much they're getting accomplished or not. And then also they did, have an opportunity to identify what challenges they have and what might help them, address those challenges. Cause I think that's our responsibility, because it is a lot for some of these committees, like the finance committee is incredibly dedicated. And I think sort of asking those questions so that we know what they might need is important, and also what their priorities are for the upcoming year, so that number one, they align with what the town needs, and also that they have some goals for the upcoming year. And so I think going through them, why don't we just quickly go through them one by one and see if anybody has any questions? So. And the other thing,
Just for sake of time, I read through all of them.
okay,
Yeah. I would.
so does anybody have any questions, comments?
I thought it was really helpful just to have, one, the basic personnel information, that was really helpful. And just very short form, sort of what the priorities were. And whatever, if there are any difficulties or whatever, or wanna do things different, so I found that helpful. Not highlighting anything typically.
So anything else, Richard, that you?
No, I looked through it and it was, for me, it's just good information to.
So I would say that the
Right.
Coastal Waters Committee had a very specific recommendation that that the open seat on coastal waters be posted on the town site. So I think that's something
Yeah.
we could do. And then Herb, since you're here, implementing the new operations policy with Public Works and TA would be helpful in communication execution. That new policy is where?
It's now part of the brain infrastructure document, that you guys will be seeing.
So we haven't seen it.
You haven't seen yet. It's been reviewed by us. I think we're ready to send it to you.
That's all right. I didn't think I knew what it was.
Yeah,
They,
it's,
their,
the old one's on the website.
their plan was pretty specific about sort of what they're doing and, you know, what they have done. They also have, you know, when they would be meeting, and that's the other thing, just so we know when these committees meet and avoid conflicts with them overlapping. I will say one thing. Many of the committees said that they were governed by an ordinance when in fact they are not. So it's kind of important that committees understand what governs their operation.
Yeah.
And so that's something we need to kind of straighten out with people.
To that same point, your new policy about remote access, if somebody opts into that program. There's no sort of instructions like if you want to get back out of it, or how you get back out of it, or if you can get back out of it.
Get tracked.
Yeah, it's like a one-way street. So putting that on there as a question, you know, have you opted into the remote access policy or procedure or whatever you want to call it? Might be a reasonable question for the committee, so they know.
Yep. And you guys did, in the copy we have, you don't have any of the grants that you received listed.
Was that a question?
It's not on here, so.
It's a question for.
Yep.
Put on there.
Yeah. That's all right. It's just in the future, it'd be good to have that.
Oh, I didn't even notice that part.
And then, so anyway, there were a couple things that I think, you know, we can address. I think that Vika and I should maybe, you know, go through these and see which ones the board may want to address as suggestions. And obviously even just populating these committees is part of the challenge. And I would say the committees have raked in some money between coastal waters, the broadband, 975,000. The climate action team's been pretty successful. So, I mean, they are bringing in revenue to the town, which is really helpful. So I think, you know, that's particularly good. I guess I would, and I feel bad now because Eliza's out of the room, but the housing task force is a concern because they don't have a chairperson. They've been operating for a year and don't have a chairperson. That's the very first thing you should do when you create a committee. And, you know, because the chairperson kind of dictates how the committee, you know, they're in charge of making sure the committee flies straight and operates. And they have only met a few times. But given that we just appointed a new member this week and then somebody previously, what I would suggest is that we just can communicate maybe through Vika that we're concerned about, you know, that the committee get up and running and kind of get focused on whatever they're gonna do, because I think one of the things that's a real tendency, and I've been caught in it myself, if you're on the select board, you don't direct that committee. The committees are very much supposed to be separate. They're community driven. And so you don't come in and set the agenda. And they really would prefer that you do that. And so I had to really step back on the climate action team because I didn't know what was going on and it was easier for me to sort of say, we need to do this. The ad hoc, you know, the ex officio member that's from the select board can help provide information and communicate back and forth with the board, but you're not supposed to participate as a committee member and definitely not as a chairperson. And so this committee, I think Eliza would agree, kind of was suffering from that situation. So if they do need to kind of get organized and, you know, get a chairperson and start meeting at least in a regular way. And also we do require that the committees post their meetings ahead of time and that they're all public so that if anybody from the public wants to attend, they can. And so, and I didn't see that as a big problem in terms of support. Like, it isn't like people were saying we need administrative support to help us make sure we get our agendas on. So I didn't see that.
Can I speak relative to that? The reason we didn't put our grants down there is because we don't oversee the grants. We applied, we fill out
Well,
the application, but we don't oversee them, so that was the term that the town staff oversees.
Well, but we meant that the committee applied for, and maybe we can change the form.
Okay.
I mean, same with the broadband grant. I mean, there's a, there, we,
That is an administrative function, we would depend on to get grants.
is the town oversees them.
Yeah.
I would say that the climate action team has overseen the grants. They've done that part of it also, not happily perhaps.
Yeah, I
but-
don't think it should be that way.
Right, well, sometimes I think that's one thing we gotta look at, especially if we get any more grants, say for the stump here, because it's
Yeah.
beyond our capacity.
Yeah.
So money's great until you have to manage it, and, we did get extra money on the wildfire grant for administrative management, so that's a case where they funded it. All right, so any other thoughts on the housing committee? That's the only one that I saw sort of, kind of operating kind of riskily, at risk or whatever.
No, I just, the one, the broadband one stuck out with me, that these remaining unexpected funds from the project. Like Vika, that's one that we should be paying close attention to in light of our upcoming meeting. I mean, do you have any idea of the scope of, like, how?
I don't, and that's something that with the work that we've started digging further in, Andrew and I have sat down and looked at it, and he's met with Michael Porter to make sure that the numbers they have are reflective of the numbers we have. And then, try to make sure that we have a good understanding of what that looks like, because when someone else is overseeing something, it's hard to know what that looks like, so.
And I think to Herb's point, that's maybe something we kind of need to be a little more thoughtful about is, these committees managing sort of town fund liabilities. And maybe they shouldn't be at all. I'd rather not, but then we need to have somebody in that capacity. And so I think that's one area that's really kind of vague right now, that we don't really have a good system for. And it was a real hassle figuring out some of these grants after the fact. Kind of, the state required certain types of reporting, and now we have even more reporting on from NOAA. So I think, that's a future discussion of sort of how to manage, and maybe Mark can provide some input on that, and Andrew, because we don't have a good system for it, and it's not, we have a lot of grants. And like the coastal waters just comes in, it's a chunk of change and it kind of goes in, but some of these other grants that the climate action team is on, it's quarterly reports and quarterly allocations, some are prepaid, some are, reimbursements, it's like very complicated. And so it probably would be best if the committees themselves don't get involved in too much of the financial management, but I'm not sure.
We don't get reports and invoices exchange or anything like that. We don't get any information that circling back to us.
We do, because the committee itself has to make reports to the state for grants that we receive. And so we do need to be in the loop, and different towns do it differently. But anyway, I think to Earhart's point, making sure we have a handle on, we don't want to find out some committees 25 grand in hot because we weren't paying attention. So
Climate action might be the only one that,
kind of does
and
that.
broadband were the two, yeah. The rest of them have gone directly through the office.
And I think that's one thing Andrew and Mark will be working on, is how to track that and preferably how to manage it so committees aren't managing it. I will also mention that we did not, when we got this packet, receive a report from the planning board, and we still haven't. So hopefully they'll submit that soon, because that's a pretty important committee, and kind of understanding where we're headed with projects is you know, stuff they have to do would be important, so. All right, last thing on the agenda, is the recommendation from the code enforcement officer, to discuss and take any necessary action regarding code enforcement officer fees and given our discussion tonight,
Oh, fees.
I'm thinking that we should maybe table this till we get further into the budget process. For one thing, I'd like to know what our total fee, what we collect, do you know offhand what we've collected for, you know, what's the basis for these fee increases?
So the fee increases that he's recommended in here aren't necessarily fees that are increasing that have already been in place.
These are new ones.
They're new ones, right.
With the new ones, he's recommending due to the fact that he's been in the position for a little bit over a year and he has seen loopholes in areas where he thought the town should be collecting more percent.
Okay.
And so, there is a couple of, small recommendations, like with the mini split heat pumps installations, that's become more of a thing. A few years ago, that wasn't in it, and so if the town is, paying a code enforcement officer to go and, you know, to deal with that, it's only fair that that is recouped somehow. Another one which, is relative to like, the adding administrative fee relative to, public hearing notices and things like that. He, made the recommendation for $300 for advertising fee, so. A couple of years ago, when it came to advertising for a hearing, so planning board with all these short line restorations, we have to advertise it in the newspaper. When the forecaster was around, it was like $75, very cheap. We're paying a couple $100, almost $300 to advertise in the Portland Press Herald, a teeny tiny little thing. That's a significant increase in our budget, which I'm still trying to anticipate and predict how to put that in. That shouldn't go on the taxpayers, that should go back on that individual applicant who wants to be heard in front of the planning board, who should have paid that $300. So the fees in here are really the holes that have been missing that he has seen based on his,
So-
not any increases due to existing ones. And then the one thing that he did recommend is making a change that for anything that is larger than 400 square feet should not be considered a shed.
Right.
Because he's seen that people are turning it into something more when it gets a little bit bigger, and then that's a whole different ballgame.
All right, so these are, and I guess now that you say that, it is mostly new stuff. So I guess we can go with this, but one thing I think it would be good to get a handle on at some point. Kind of what revenue is being generated by fees, because at one point building permits were, you know, generating a lot more money than we had thought. But also, I assume Paul has a context for these fees that he's posted, I'm just gonna take that into. So I guess if people have any questions, we can ask Vika, she's more up to speed than I am, and if not, we can approve.
So we should take a motion to approve,
Yep,
okay,
and we can change them next week.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's 26,012.
Yep,
Make a motion to approve the recommended Township of Eagle Island new Township of Eagle Island fees and fines.
did somebody,
I will.
I thought it was code enforcement officer.
Yeah.
Code enforcement officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say code officer, yeah, code enforcement officers, fees and fines.
any second on that motion?
I-
Dave, okay. Any more discussion about the code fees? Code officer fees, building fees, whatever. Okay, all in favor? Great. So before we go, I'm just handing out, this is the tentative agenda for Saturday, just to remind everybody that we've got to be here 9 o'clock on Saturday. And I would expect hopefully be done by 11, if not sooner, that's the goal. So, if you get one, okay.
And there'll be enough to,
Right.
sometime Fridays.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be, there are some kind of bigger things to talk about, like, you know, anyway, for us to sort of talk in the finance committee, that even if the details aren't exactly nailed down. It's like, you know, how to prioritize things, how we're gonna pay for certain town-related infrastructure versus, let's say, fire department, and what things do we wanna bond, and kind of what our things are. And it's not gonna matter too much what the numbers, you know, how specific.
Okay.
So we gotta do what other business
Oh, other
communications, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm done.
Approve the minutes.
Okay, so, thanks, Aaron, I was already packing up to leave.
Well, I was, I have to leave, but I knew it was there.
All right, so the next thing is we need a motion on the minutes, which, we received about that here, so, anybody wanna,
Motion to approve the minutes of January 21st,
yep,
2025.
yep, second David, all in favor? Okay,
No other business and no communications.
yeah, and so other business and communications, do you have anything important on those?
I have a lot of emails that I haven't gotten through this
Yeah.
week, so I'm not fully caught up. The two things that I do think are worth mentioning. I did receive an email from Mike Morse. After this agenda item was already set about another proposal that they're recommending relative to Walden Point Road. So that will be up for you to, discuss in the future. And then, I've had some back and forth communications, with the insurance company. There was a small, fender bender involved with a firefighter while they were backing up a vehicle into the building. We've had the appraisers come, the insurance, it's all been figured out, and so, the costs are covered by insurance, and so that's been some back and forth. So we got the good news that the insurance is covering that. Those are really the two big ones that I think you haven't known about. And if there's anything else, I'll let you know.
Thanks.
Or to find us.
Okay, and so is everybody planning, at least in this crew, planning to be here Saturday? And we'll say get something, oh, and here's the warrant.
We signed, I think we all signed.
You did sign on this? All right, so I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second that one.
So that was Richard and then Earhart, it's a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
All in favor?